What is up, everyone? It's Ryan Moran and Ryan Gallagher here on R&R Talking Football. 2022 NFL free agency got underway Monday afternoon, and it's been a pretty exciting 3 days for our Jets here with 5 new free agent additions, and they've retained a ton of their own players, mostly to one-year contracts. And the 5 new players that they've brought in were all at positions of need. A couple of young players and a couple of older vets, a lot of guys who've been in Super Bowls over the last 3 years, and players who just overall are going to make this roster better, bolster the talent level that the team has. And there's a whole lot to really be excited about, right now with the way that the first 3 days of free agency have gone.
Yeah, I'm super excited to really, hop into it. We made our team, the Jets, a lot better over these last 3 days. We didn't necessarily go crazy in free agency in terms of our spending. I feel like we were kind of smart with the money we did spend. We did get quality players, but with that being said, I can't even remember an offseason kind of as fun as this one for the Jets in quite a long time. I guess you can say the 2015 one in comparison, but that one had more so like older veterans toward the end of their career. The Jets kind of, and they've been keen on this under the Douglas era, but especially this offseason, we're seeing a little bit more balance. Like we're still adding the ascending players who are proven and hopefully even continue take the next step here in New York. But we're also seeing now veterans who are accomplished and, like you said, have Super Bowl experience and stuff like that, which I really liked, and we talked about in our last episode, which I was hoping we would do.
Absolutely. The winning experience, the leadership. You lose somebody like Foley Fatukasi and to bring in someone like CJ Uzama, who's a vocal, outspoken leader, can lead this offense, can be, like we talked about, just having a veteran presence with proven production in the passing game at tight end for Zach Wilson. So that was really exciting. Just to rattle off all the re-signings, obviously before free agency, they got last week Marcus Joyner, Will Parks, Connor McDermott, and Nick Bowden all back before it started. And then obviously since Monday, Braxton Berrios, which was a bit of a surprise, Tevin Coleman, Nathan Shepard, Dan Feeney, Joe Flacco, and then bring back both Mike White and Eddie Pinheiro on that original round tender there. And then the 5 free agent additions to this point, Laken Tomlinson, who's going to start at right guard, fill a massive hole, guy who was a Pro Bowler last year, knows the system. So obviously the fit is ideal. CJ Uzama, who I just touched up on, going to bring a ton just in the run and the pass game for the Jets at tight end position. And then Tuesday was really exciting, adding 2 25-year-old defensive backs in DJ Reed and Jordan Whitehead, who I think are going to bring an attitude. You're talking about 2 guys who aren't the biggest, but they just play with heart. They play with effort. And they're going to bring an attitude, I think, to this Jets defense, especially Whitehead in the running game. I'm really excited about that. And then just recently, before we went up here, acquiring Tyler Conklin on a 3-year contract to have 2 tight ends, for Mike LaFleur to operate out of 12 personnel. Really exciting 5 additions, positions that had to be upgraded this offseason. And, 3 of those guys are still relatively young in that 25, 26-year-old range. So it's been an exciting start here for the Jets. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It's been let's just take it one by one in terms of the signings. Laken Tomlinson was up first, obviously, opening day on Monday. And I feel like a lot of fans expected us to have interest. I'm not so sure everyone expected us to land him because obviously there's a couple of good options we could have went with. I do think the Jets had somewhat of interest in Brandon Sheriff. I'm not sure if we were willing to go as high as the Jaguars did. But at the end of the day, I'm glad we got Tomlinson. Obviously, the contract is fair. Obviously, we're paying a pretty – I think he's definitely our highest paid free agent so far. But rightfully so. He made the Pro Bowl last year. It's been a steady starter with the Niners for, I believe, 5 seasons. And obviously, he's going to make the switch from left guard to right guard. But we've been talking about right guard as a need for such a long time. And I'm glad we didn't wait until the draft to, fill this hole. We kind of went out and did it right away. And honestly, I know there's been rumblings about McGovern, but I do feel pretty good about our offensive line overall. Obviously, we still need depth. I still want maybe a guard signing, and then obviously paired with whatever we do in the draft. But we definitely need another tackle depth. But just the starting 5 is a lot better than it's been probably since 2010, 2011. It's been that long. So definitely on the up. Douglas kind of kept his promise there when he came in, 3 off seasons ago. It's a totally different line, and we feel a lot different. No more 32nd, 31st ranked lines. If all goes well, it's top 10 line.
Absolutely. The Tomlinson signing was quite a start for the Jets Monday afternoon. You said it best. I mean, Douglas certainly put the resources where, he said he would when he first got here in 2019. You look, it took time, obviously, to get to 2022, but this line, I mean, you talk about three, significant additions and investments that he made on the pro side in free agency, the 2 first-round draft picks. With Tomlinson, the switch from left to right guard will definitely, I guess, be somewhat of a challenge, but I guess when you're in the scheme for the last 5 years, like he's been, you don't have to pick up on the terminology. You have familiarity with the blocking schemes and concepts. So he kind of gets a leg up and all that. And just to kind of switch sides and, adjust the muscle memory, so to speak, going from left to right, I guess is the one adjustment. And luckily he's a veteran player with a ton of experience. And I think the most important thing with Tomlinson, as much as anything, is just the durability. I mean, this is a guy who I think over the last 5 years missed 1 game, and over the last couple of years, he's only missed a couple of snaps. So the Jets have definitely had problems with injuries, and I think Tomlinson is someone who week in and week out will be able to count on.
That's a great point. And the 1 game he missed was actually because he was traded that week from the Lions to the Niners. So he really didn't even miss a game. And that's a big thing. Durability has been a concern all over this team, any position for the last couple of seasons. So love to see that. And going past him, that was obviously a great start. Barrios kind of re-signed, I believe an hour later. And like you said, it was kind of a shocker, just based on what we were hearing the day before, the days leading up to it. I always believed that he was going to get $8 or $9 million per year from, I don't know, just a couple. Miami was one of the rumored teams, just a couple other teams. And based on what Christian Kirk got in this market, nothing would have surprised me. But with that being said, I'm glad he's back. I feel like the reaction that he got from the Jets, not only fan base, but a couple of their players was really, really indicating. I think that was one of those signings where I think it might pay off more than just, obviously he's great as a punt returner and a special teamer. And when he does get his chance, he can certainly make some plays happen. But I feel like that was really one of those coming together moments with the team and team, just how they build and how close they come over the last under the Douglas era. I feel like Barrios might be something that wasn't something that I was really even factoring in, but how much Barrios was liked. But he's definitely one of the most liked Jets by far. I think just based on that reaction, and obviously he's his team captain and stuff like that, and he's pretty good friends with Zach. So and for the price we got him, I absolutely love it, and I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad we matched it, and I'm glad he's back as a Jet.
Absolutely, it was a pleasant surprise to me. I mean, you said it best. It almost seemed like Barrios had priced himself out with the Jets and was going to get a better opportunity elsewhere. So I was surprised and ecstatic to be able to keep him. You said it. I mean, him and John Franklin Myers were really Joe Douglas's first, 2 big additions there. And when he was hired in the summer of 2019, and they were both acquired through waivers right before the start of the season. So job well done by JD there to be able to get 2 guys through waivers like that, who've both gotten second contracts here within the last couple of months. Barrios certainly earned it on special teams every year. I feel like he got better. His role expanded from punt returning to kick returning, where this year he obviously earned first team All Pro. And in the passing game, I mean, as an offensive weapon, he certainly every year saw his role expand and was more and more productive, did some good things. You look at this past year, how Mike LaFleur was creative with him with the orbit motioning and the screen game. And just to be able to have that insurance, for Zach Wilson, obviously that camaraderie, the chemistry that they were able to build last year, and to just have a reliable 4th receiver behind Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and hopefully somebody that they draft early on, is certainly good with Barrios.
Yeah, it certainly helps our depth. We'll talk about maybe if we see any other free agent coming in terms of wide receiver, but certainly surprised, like you said, and definitely capable number 4. And even if he has to start a game or 2 at slot, it's not the biggest deal in the world. He can still go out there and help us win a game. Let's move on. A lot of the free agency started off with offense, as you can tell. And to wrap up day 1, we signed CJ Uzama. Definitely a surprise. Just a player I wasn't really even considering entering free agency. I just kind of figured he'd be back with the Bengals, considering their cap space and considering the year he just had with Joe Burrow. But when we signed him, I was happy at first, but not even a but, just add to it. Just finding out more about him, even as a person, and just the leader he was with the Bengals was certainly just made me feel even better about the signing. I already just from an outsider's view, obviously watching him last year, I know he had a big bounce back year, obviously after tearing his Achilles. So, and he didn't look like he lost step at all, honestly, from that. So that's definitely encouraging. And besides that, just to find out the impact and how much he was even loved by the Bengals, that seemed to be a theme in what Joe Douglas is looking for, and Robert Saleh just on their team. So certainly love it. Definitely the best tight end we've had in just like our offensive line team. We haven't had a tight end in like 10, 11 years. So absolutely love it.
Yeah, it was really the end of that, AFC Championship run. Those 2 years the Jets had where the offensive line and tight end position were pretty strong, and it's been such a weakness for so many years. And to be able to invest the resources that JD has on the OL the last couple of years, and now with Uzama, I mean, that was a really exciting signing there late Monday afternoon. It's a 3-year contract, a guy who last year, you look at his target amount, like it wasn't even anything too significant, and he caught most of the passes that went his way, was productive, about 50 catches, 500 yards, and I think he had 5 touchdowns. You're talking about a big target who can run. He's good after the catch, and he can also help inline as a blocker in the running game. Obviously, we both kind of discussed it here, just what he's going to bring intangibly as a vocal leader. Obviously, his winning experience last year, is certainly needed throughout the locker room for this team. And it was an exciting signing. I think, you said it best, coming off of the injury. He really didn't look like he missed a beat last year. And, he's still going to play this year at 29 years old. So I think it's a really good addition.
Yeah, and it's turning the page, obviously, the next day, focused on the defensive side of the ball. I would say, guys, maybe we weren't expecting. I mean, I know you predicted Whitehead for a long time. We loved Whitehead, but just based on what we were hearing Monday night and kind of Monday day, the 2 players who were talked about were Gilmore and Marcus Williams. Obviously, let's go to the signings first, so we can talk about, if we kind of are sad that we missed out. Personally, I'm not that sad on it. I'll go back to it. I want to talk about the players first, but DJ Reed was certainly someone that, not really someone I guess fans really talked about, obviously, before free agency. I don't think he's obviously a big name. Seattle was kind of, dumpster fire last year just as a team. Russell Wilson was injured, so wasn't a lot of buzz about the Seahawks, but certainly a lot. This was probably the signing that I think, from the other point of views, fan bases, they were the most upset, I think, with this, just based on what I've seen on Twitter and on Instagram. Like, the Seattle fans were not happy that DJ Reed was let go. Like, someone who's 25, been a starter for them the last year and a half, this year had some incredible stats, in zone and in man. He was top 4 and top 5 in really good categories. Obviously, he's going to be playing the right side corner, I believe, primarily. That's where he was at his best with Seattle. Which is pretty cool and also he's great in run defense. Obviously, that shouldn't be your primary objective when looking at a corner, but our run defense was so awful last year. I think that is noteworthy. I think that also probably played into their decision to sign him. And you know what? I know he's a little bit smaller. When we first signed him, everyone's seen 5'9", but I did see that he has pretty long arms, and I believe 10.5-inch hands. So, obviously he's a little bit shorter, but it has stopped him playing in the NFL. Went against some really good matchups last year, and definitely held his own against players like Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, and even the 49ers like Deebo Samuel and Ayuk. So absolutely love it. Obviously, that one was I guess, a little bit shocking in terms of the numbers, but I think as we found out more about him, the money kind of made more sense.
Absolutely. I was pumped with the Reed signing. To be honest, for me, the contract was kind of what I expected. 3 years in that 10 to 12 range was what I was kind of thinking. And he was someone who, if the Jets went for a corner, personally, I didn't really think JC or Carlton Davis were realistic options. And I did think if the Jets were going for a corner, that Reed was going to be in play with his connection to Saleh from 18 and 19 with the 49ers. You said it, he doesn't look the part just because he's not tall, he's not big, but you said it best. I mean, the length that he possesses, he certainly uses his advantage. He's a competitive player. Statistically, he was really good last year. Really grew just as a corner, the last 2 years with the Seahawks, didn't get very many opportunities his first 2 years with the 49ers. And him and Whitehead both, I mean, what they're going to be able to just contribute to the running game. I mean, you talk about, I think, a bottom 5 ranked defense stopping the run last year. And you're getting 2 guys who, like I said, they're not the biggest, they're not the tallest, but they play with heart, they play with effort, and just the attitude, I think, is needed on this defense. And Reed is an exciting signing. 25-year-old corner who's probably just hitting his prime, is acclimated to the scheme, and just really brings that cornerback 1 potential and just the talent that's needed to the secondary.
Yeah, that's another thing, just before you even hit Whitehead, the fact, you said 25 and 24. Both these guys are. Obviously, Whitehead's turning 25, I believe, on Friday. But
tomorrow.
still, bringing in, especially in the secondary, you want players who are young and in their prime or entering their prime. You don't want, like, it's much different signing a tight end at 29 than it is a corner at 29. So, like, absolutely love that. And like you said, like I didn't even mention, familiar obviously with the system. Even Seattle's system is very close to what we're running. So obviously it shouldn't be that much of a change for him. So he should be pretty comfortable when he comes here. And he's probably going to be our number one corner this year, depending on what happens in the draft. And definitely, me and you have been talking about it for a long time. I wasn't going to be happy if we kind of entered this year. We're kind of the same kind of cornerback unit, and that's between free agency and the draft. But obviously, I don't think we have to worry about that anymore. And just hitting Whitehead, someone that I know you loved for a long time. You even predicted him in our prediction video. So congratulations on hitting on Whitehead, a player that I really, really like. Going to be 25, just an absolute missile. Like you said, obviously he's a little bit smaller, but he does not play like that at all. Even Bucs fans are saying that at times he was their best defender last year in certain games. And I feel like he's really going to bring an attitude here and kind of he's going to be like ferocious, so an intimidating player and someone that can actually help with tackles for loss, obviously help in the run game. And obviously he's primarily going to be played in the box, which is absolutely fine because we did re-sign Joyner. But I also think we're going to address it in the draft in terms of free safety. But I wouldn't be surprised to be running a lot of free safety looks this year. And I feel like Whitehead's going to be absolutely pivotal just in the box and helping us stop the run and kind of blow up anything that's in the short passing game.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it. I mean, Whitehead was somebody who I really wanted all along. Young player who, like you said, turns 25 at the end of this week, hitting his prime years, has been a starter all 4 years. He's been in the league with the Bucs, even as a day 3 round 4 selection, his rookie year. Someone who is definitely in the box, going to make his presence felt against the run. Pressuring the quarterback is something I'm even thinking about, how Sal and Ulbrich will utilize him. Even in like coverage, I think he's underrated. I think, he's definitely got the ability in men to play on tight ends, covering the slot a little bit. And just what he's going to bring, intangibly to the unit, the attitude. He's obviously been on a winning team the last 2 years. And in the box, I mean, he's going to definitely make an impact stopping the run for this defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously, I guess rounded out today, right? There was no other signings. Tyler Conklin, actually, I believe like 20 minutes ago, so not that long ago. The Jets were apparently rumored to still be in the tight end market after Uzama. We didn't know what that meant because obviously that could mean a depth signing or just someone to. But no, they went out and got Tyler Conklin, and he's only 27. I believe 26 right now. He'll be 27 in the summer. Just a player who actually broke out last season with the Vikings, kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously, after Smith went down for the year, they actually traded for our former tight end, Chris Herndon. So I don't think even they seen that coming. But he had an absolutely great year. I believe almost 700 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. And I'm super excited. You mentioned 12 personnel. That's something that we weren't able to do a lot last year. We're definitely going to be doing a lot of it now. Tight end has been fans have been like clamoring for that all offseason. And a lot of us expected us to maybe even double dip in the draft, but primarily most mock drafts that Jet fans are making had McBride at 35 or 38, and that's over now. But with that being said, absolutely love it to go and get that addressed right now because tight end is a position where, and I still want to draft one on day 3, but that's a position where it takes 2 to 3 years to get impact. And I'm glad that we're not waiting because if we had signed Uzama and then drafted a tight end in round 3, and Uzama has to miss 4 or 5 games for whatever reason. And I don't want to look at it like that, but I'm just saying, obviously, you'd be in a tough position. So I'm glad that we didn't sit on what we had, and we just kind of went out and added another really, really good addition and someone that's going to help make Zach Wilson's life a lot easier.
Absolutely. I mean, it was arguably outside of right guard the biggest weakness that the offense had, and they didn't just add to it. I mean, they fortified a strength here with Tyler Conklin on a 3-year contract, going to turn 27 over the summer. Last year was really his first season as a featured target. It was like last year, his target amount was more than his first 3 years combined. And he was productive. I mean, over 60 catches, basically 600 yards, I think 3 or 4 touchdowns, like you said. Somebody who I think can even be flexed out wide a little bit. You look at some of his big plays from last year. So from a matchup standpoint, pre-snap, he can kind of help Zach a little bit in that sense. And look, he's coming from an offense where the running game is kind of similar. So he will be able to help inline as a blocker with the zone concepts that Mike LaFleur wants to run. And just overall, I mean, to be able to add Uzama and Conklin for Zach Wilson, two guys who've just had productive years in the passing game, with the way the tight end position and, rookies in the draft can kind of take a couple of years to come along. It was certainly exciting to be able to double down. And Conklin was someone who I'd wanted, you would have wanted for a while. I think the contract was just about what we expected, and it was exciting. It really came from out of nowhere, and I was pumped about it.
Yeah, I guess since we haven't really mentioned the contracts, a lot of players. I think it's another offseason where Douglas hit on value. Obviously, definitely, this has been by far his most aggressive offseason, just in terms of adding players. I feel like obviously the first year wasn't very much. It was more, third and fourth waves of free agency, guys who were going to really count for much more of that rebuilding year. Last year, kind of, stepped up a little bit, got Carl Lawson, Corey Davis, and I guess you can count Jared Davis as that, even though most fans kind of knew that wasn't, going to work out. But, this year's been a different approach. Now it's not 2 or 3 guys or 0 guys. Or even the year before, actually. We did get, I think, George Fant the first year, if I'm mistaken. So we added 1 or 2, but it went from that to, adding 5 guys. I don't even think we're done yet. I don't think there's any more splashes coming. Maybe, we'll see when this episode releases, but Daniel Hunter would be the only other one, possibly, just depending on what the Vikings are looking for, because that's a rare opportunity. The Jets were in on the Chandler Jones market. I don't know how far we gotten, but we were listed as 1 of the 4 teams. So that's always a position that Douglas and Sal, I believe, will always be on if the opportunity presents itself. And you just feel like Hunter is that rare, even though he has missed a lot of time over the last 2 years. He is kind of one of the 5, 6 best pass rushers in football, in my opinion, when he's on the field. And he's 27 years old. So he'll be 28 this offseason, I believe. But, and if the Vikings are, because the Vikings look like they are stuck in cap hell right now. Kirk Cousins signed his deal. Apparently, Conklin didn't get an offer from them. I was just reading a quote. So the Vikings kind of seem to be in that rebuilding, kind of retooling stage. And if Hunter doesn't fit in those plans, some team is going to get a really, really good player.
Absolutely. I'm with you on Hunter. If there's one big splash addition left, here on the pro side of things with the veteran, I think he's definitely the one. You and I both were talking about Zadaria Smith and having interest in him. I think he actually got a pretty reasonable deal. Look, if the Jets went for that, I would have been all for it, and still even drafted Kayvon Thibodeau or whoever in the first round just to continue to add to the D line. Just to quickly go over the contracts, like you said, I mean, to be able to get Berrios and Whitehead both on 2-year deals and then 3-year deals for Tomlinson, Uzama, Reed, and Conklin, just to know you're going to have these guys through the next, 2 to 3 years, I think is really nice. It's a good luxury to have. Like you said, when Douglas first got here, I mean, it was a lot of those 1-year deals, obviously, because you knew that they were kind of just rebuilding and not going to be very good. And I think this is kind of, a sense like, hey, we know that we're getting there, we're getting close, and to be able to keep Berrios and add those 5 new players and hopefully more to it. I'd like to, highlight a couple myself here and, put this team in a position to where they're competing in late November, early December, and have a chance at postseason play. So a couple of players personally who I wanted to, discuss who are still out there. I think for me, really, it just comes back to the defensive line, that they would ideally like to continue to keep this rotation and have Quentin Williams, Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, all these guys fresh. Obviously, you lose Foley Fatukasi, who's great stopping the run. A couple of players at the D tackle position who I like, Justin Jones from the Chargers, who's still pretty young. A couple of, pass rush specialists who can play outside and inside with Arden Key and Rasheem Green, who are both young players. Key was obviously with the 49ers last year and had his best year. So the scheme fit, was pretty ideal for him if, the Jets were to acquire him. So ideally, one of those 3 players, I think for me at this point in time, would be pretty nice to just, really fortify the D line before the draft.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I know you've been a fan of Justin Jones for a long time. I do think defensive end or tackle will be addressed in terms of, it just depends, I guess, on what, because I feel like now that Von Miller and Chandler Jones signed today, and even Zadaria Smith, even though he was definitely the most reasonable one, those were kind of the biggest, fish left, and it feels like they might, the rest of the market, second and third wave, will actually, become active, and they'll sign, I think, over the next 2 or 3 days. So I would expect us to be in probably on 1 for edge, 1 for defense tackle before the draft. But You mentioned a lot of the contracts, and I think the key word was how flexible we are now entering the draft. I kind of made that point with the tight end, but it applies to a lot of positions on the team. I don't think we're going into the draft. Obviously, we still have holes, right? But we're at a point now where we can feel pretty comfortable for the most part going with best player available. Like for my opinion, I would still, if the Jets took Sauce Gardner at 4, I would still be happy. So and this is something that me and you talked about in a couple of the preview episodes. I don't think the Jets view the cornerback room like the fans do or the public did. Just I don't think they view it as that good, to be honest with you. Like Bryce Hall, that's been kind of talked about, not really addressed, but kind of like rumored for the last couple of weeks about how the Jets view him and Eccles as very, very close to each other. And I feel like the Jets love him, those two players, and they always mention Dunn. But I think they love them as players who are going to be in the cornerback room. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're starters. And obviously, we're not sure if you feel like there might be a pretty good shot that one of them ends up starting on the outside. But like, it totally wouldn't stun me, with all the picks we had, if actually none of them start outside of Carter in the slot. But they're still going to be in the cornerback room, and you don't know what the injury is. It's a long season, so there's a pretty good chance, they get in there for a few games either way. But I just, we brought out that point. I just felt like it was kind of needed to be brought up again. Just, I feel like obviously Jets, we knew about the safety. Everyone knew we needed safeties, but the cornerback was definitely an underrated need this offseason. I don't think we're going to be signing obviously anyone else in free agency. That's more toward the draft. But just heading back to the free agency talk, because I know it kind of all, when we think free agency now, obviously your head now goes to the draft because we're not past free agency, but we kind of got past that initial first wave in terms of probably the big signings at the position. But yeah, definitely, defensive end, defense tackle, I believe is coming in the next couple of days. It's going to be interesting to see. I've talked about this with you, for the last couple of weeks, but especially the last couple of days. I think me and you disagree about this a little bit. Not that it's a need, but I know you want to go forward in the draft. I'd rather get a linebacker now because I just don't trust the Jets to draft a linebacker that high, and that's the issue. Because like maybe now it's more realistic because we don't need to be taking a tight end at 35 or 38. But I just feel like the way this staff and kind of the beat has leaked about how much they like Quincy Williams and obviously they love Mosley. I still feel like there's still expectations on either Sherwood or Nasruddin. I just feel like they wouldn't do that until day 3, and that's something I disagree with. But I don't want to take that away from the offseason we're having because realistically, we're not going to be able to fix the entire team in one offseason. But the Jets, more importantly, let's get back to the main point here. Jets are making, not only are they flexible, but they're making moves to compete and start winning games now. It's not going to be any more of like, we hope that next year we can make the playoffs. Like this is a legitimate playoff caliber team. We're not going to say that they're definitely making the playoffs, but they should be fighting in the hunt in November and entering December. Whether they make it or not, that's to be determined on the rookies and players taking steps. And honestly, some luck. You need a little bit of luck in the division and the conference we're playing in, but we need to be competitive. And I feel like we have made the moves to enter that.
Absolutely. I mean, for a change, adding a 29 and a 30-year-old in CJ Uzama and Lakin Tomlinson, two players who really embody just winning now, like getting pieces offensively who, you can count on from the jump to contribute. Like you said it best. I mean, you always want to build for the future, but some of these moves are showing you that they are trying to win now. And while I don't feel like everything is perfect from a, roster construction standpoint, like I still think, there's an edge opposite Carl Lawson needed. You said it with linebacker. Like I think they need a coverage specialist at the position there on the second level. Obviously, they need another starting receiver, which is probably going to be addressed with the 10th pick in the draft. But overall, like the tight end, the safety, the offensive line, the corner, to add to those groups and just like you said, leave yourself flexibility to not, be forced into drafting a particular position with 4 and 10, I think is a pretty ideal approach to take.
Yeah, and it's something that just heading back to because we were talking about depth on the defense line and edge or tackle. This is something I think me and you've been talking about even in our mock draft and related to the Jets. We've even talked about how much this regime and coaching staff values defense tackle. And I feel like now fans will kind of accept it more that we had free agency and kind of filled certain holes like tight end, for example, and guard. I really do feel like there's going to be defense tackle taking at 35 or 38, like that high. And you know what? We have 4 picks in the top 40. And based on how free agency's played out, we kind of missed, like that was the only position I feel like we actually missed out on. Obviously, DJ Jones would have been nice, but he went to Denver. There was a couple other guys that we could have been in on, but we just kind of missed out definitely on the top tier. Now, would I still sign you brought up Justin Jones, even a Michael Pierce, something like that? Sure. I don't know if the Jets, I think they probably will, but I feel like they're definitely going to sign an edge, but I do wonder if they'll just pivot and just take a defense tackle pretty high in the draft instead of, just paying for a veteran, 1-year deal here.
Right. So I'm definitely at D tackle. I'm open to really whatever, whether they drafted Travis Jones at 35 or 38 is something I would love. And I'm all for someone like Travis Jones in the second round with all the early picks that the Jets have. I'm also all for like adding someone like a Derek Nottie who can stop the run, has familiarity in a 4-3 front. I think Justin Jones, what he could bring as an interior pass rusher and even stopping the run is exciting. And you said it best with the edge. I mean, I really like Arden Key, Rasheem Green. I think even if they want to look for a veteran like a Jerry Hughes or Mario Addison, I would like that as well. Just to have some speed, have some veteran presence outside for the player that the Jets maybe do draft early on, just to kind of have some known depth with veteran older player. I think would be a luxury, and all in all, being able to utilize John Franklin Myers inside a little bit more, and just having that positional flexibility along the defensive line to get creative, I think is something here, as we kind of enter, I guess, the second wave of free agency, so to speak, it would be nice to see addressed.
And speaking of depth, because we talk about the defense a lot, let's kind of go back to the offense. You feel like the Jets kind of have, like, just before we even talk about free agency, just heading to the draft now, I feel like everyone now knows the draft's basically going to be a lot of defense. I'd say 80% of our draft is going to be defensive picks. And you know what? We have focused on the offense quite a lot in terms of the whole last draft class was basically all of our premium picks were on the offensive side of the ball. And even this free agency to start, we've also kind of signed, like we signed George Fant in the past, obviously McGovern, Lake and Tomlinson this year, 2 tight ends, Conklin and Zama, Corey Davis. So it's been kind of the last year and a half, 2 off seasons of like really us really going in and changing the offense and kind of doing something that we haven't seen a Jets team do in quite a long time. So the defense has to be, I think, the approach for the most part. Obviously, if there's a player that we can't pass on, you take him for the offense, definitely with that mindset as well. But wide receiver depth, I think, is definitely something we have to talk about because Allen Robinson's still out there, and he wouldn't be depth, obviously, but I feel like he's kind of the only marquee signing that you could bring in for a wide receiver that's left, obviously. But I'm assuming that we're not going to enter that market. I feel like it'd be more likely that we got Hunter than it would be for edge than it would be Robinson, a wide receiver. So assuming we're not getting him, which we're probably not, what wide receiver are you looking at just to kind of round out the unit? Or are you bringing back Keelan Cole, or are you trying to bring someone else in?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And I agree that receiver depth is certainly needed. Outside of Elijah, Corey, and Braxton, I think there is such a void and an unknown there. And you don't want to just place all of that stress on a rookie right away. As much as I would love someone like Drake London or Garrett Wilson with the 10th pick, I think that adding a veteran kind of similar to what the Jets did in Keelan Cole a year ago makes sense. Now it's worth noting because I feel like the Jets have retained so many, players that they had last year on 1-year deals. It kind of reminds me of what the 49ers did last year with like K'Wan Williams, Emmanuel Mosley, so many of those, Jaquaski Tart, a lot of those veterans that they kept around. You look at what the Jets have done with Tevin Coleman, Dan Feeney. We'll see what happens with LDT. I mean, obviously LaMarcus Joyner. Like, I do wonder if they even had interest in bringing back Marcus May. Like, do you think potentially they look at Jameson Crowder or Keelan Cole, maybe bringing one of them back? And if they do look for, an option from a different team, I think a couple of players who I look at, Byron Pringle is definitely one, a bigger body who just had a really productive year with the Chiefs. And I do like the potential of James Washington as well.
Okay. Yeah, Pringle's been kind of talked about. Any interest in Julio Jones, the recently released Tennessee Titan? Kind of a shocker, but obviously coming off a really bad year and injury riddled.
Very much a shock because the Titans obviously don't have the 2nd round pick this year because they went for Julio last year when they obviously let Corey Davis come to us. So to be honest, I don't think realistically that Julio or A-Rob are on the Jets' radar. I think, like we've kind of said all along, I think that 10th pick, whether it's Drake London or Garrett Wilson, is really where the Jets' focus is right now with that, starting receiver spot.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It seems like it's headed that way. I could even see if 10 happened to be a player they couldn't pass on, I could even see them trading from 35 back into the first round for a Jameson Williams, Traylon Burks, caliber player. I mean, I think we're all kind of assuming that 10 will be a wide receiver now. I wouldn't be so sure because, I feel like I said before, the Jets kind of are in the position. I mean, we definitely need a wide receiver one and definitely need to address the X spot for wide receiver. But I do feel like we kind of positioned ourselves pretty well to be able to say that if 10, hypothetically, if Sauce Gardner fell there, I can't pass on that personally. Like I can't. So like, it's nice to be able to say that and be in that position where if a player does fall that caliber, just take him, and then if we need to move up, you move up. But just a point I wanted to bring up before we kind of, end this episode, and going back to it's really the wide receiver. Do you think by the end, because obviously the draft's basically 6 weeks away, end of April, do you think that Jameson Williams will enter back into the number 10 discussion? I don't think it's being talked about right now because I know he tore his ACL in end of December, beginning of January. So I know he might not be ready, but I don't think it's as big as a concern anymore as torn ACLs used to be, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way. I mean, Jameson is someone who I've always loved. He's still a top 3 receiver for me in this draft after London and Wilson. I mean, it's tough to say the 10th pick just because I feel like we don't know, I guess, everything yet. And it's still so recent. But truthfully, like I've never necessarily been concerned that it would be a long-term issue for him. And I do love your idea. Like you said, I think the dream scenario at 4 and 10 would be Kayvon and Sauce to be able to bolster the defense at 2 premium impact positions. And then to use that 35th pick to, go up and get Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Traylon Burks, whoever, is probably the best case scenario. And I guess your Williams point, to me, I still think he's very much in play as a top 15 pick. So I guess you never know. I mean, if he continues to progress faster than anticipated, look, I do think it's ultimately London or Wilson, but I wouldn't rule it out by any means. I love Williams.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I just wanted to ask that because I feel like as the weeks go on and on, there'll be more players kind of like added to the discussion, possibly taking it at number 10. And just a point I wanted to bring up because we talked so much about the value and flexibility. Just some interesting points because, DJ Reed and the combination of Whitehead only signed for, I believe, 17 million combined, 17 and a half. So how did you feel, because Marcus Williams got the $14 million a year, 5 years, 70 million with the Baltimore. With that point and with the point of Dalton Schultz hitting the franchise tag of 15 million when the Jets got Conklin and Uzama for the same price.
It's great value. I mean, you look at what Marcus Williams and Charvarius Ward got compared to what the Jets paid Whitehead and Reed. Mm-hmm. I think that value is tremendous. And just, even as a result of the Jamal Adams trade, obviously DJ Reed was just teammates with him, to be able to get those draft picks for Jamal and then 2 younger players, to add at a premium position like corner and at tight end as well. I mean, Schultz was, I feel like, so polarizing. People felt so strongly about him one way or another. And I would have been all for it if the Jets gave him a big 4-year contract. Absolutely, just because of the poor tight end play the Jets have had. But the value with Uzama and Conklin, I think 2 for the price of 1, it's definitely better off from a value standpoint. And that's the name of the game when it comes to team building in football with the hard salary cap with, 50-something players counting against that budget. I think to be able to get, 2 players at a similar price who, had pretty decent production last year. It's not like Schultz was, too far out in front of him in such a big way. And these guys weren't even featured as much as Schultz was. So the value I think that JD and his staff, were able to get here is tremendous.
Okay, and I'll ask you 2 final questions, and we can end it here. Is there anything that you regret or anything that you were hoping that we missed out on?
That's a good question.
Like taking into account that
I would say maybe not getting like one of those Tim Settle, Harrison Phillips types players. Yeah, I feel like those were affordable. Like DJ Jones got more than I expected. Yeah. And I feel like it's hard to get mad at that deal that he got. But Tim Settle and Harrison Phillips were 2 young players who I think would have replaced Foley great. But look, if they end up with Derek Nottie and Travis Jones, I will not complain. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Even just one of those, even just Travis Jones, I'd be perfectly fine with. But I guess yeah, it did seem like they kind of misplayed that field. It might have been, or that market. It might have like the Jets probably were focused on a different. Because I remember specifically at that time, I think they were really, really in on the corner and safety market. So they probably kind of let the defense tackle market kind of probably went quicker than they expected to. I feel like that was the only position that was really like fluid, and like all those signings happened first day, and like honestly, the first afternoon it kind of all happened within like 3 or 4 hour span. And just to wrap it up here, obviously it's not over yet, but how would you grade the Jets offseason so far in free agency?
I'll be honest, I got to give it an A. I mean, all the re-signings, the players that they've been able to keep, and to add five, upper tier, maybe they're not all elite, I guess, outside of
Sure.
Tomlinson. Maybe you want to say Reed and Whitehead, but I feel like they added five starters, three of the players who were young and probably just entering their prime years. They addressed two impact positions at corner and offensive line in my book. And I just think the leadership that they're going to get from some of these guys who are coming from winning teams, the familiarity that guys like Tomlinson and Reed have, on each side of the ball with the system from, the 49ers. And even you said it, the Seahawks kind of run a similar defensive scheme. I'm really pumped with the haul the Jets were able to get. And I've right now just got to give it an A.
Yeah, I'd probably give it an A minus. Only I'm a little bit stingy because I did say that I wanted one of the, I guess like star players, but I also didn't really expect to be like signing the five upper tier players we did, and we did sign like a Lakem Tomlinson, which you know what, like that is he was probably the second best guard available, unless you're counting Sheriff, and like you wouldn't totally stun me if like if someone convinced me because of his availability and all the games he's played over the years, like that he ends up being the better signing anyway. But like I said, that was the one thing I wanted to do, but I also didn't expect us to turn around and sign, five contributors, five starters, and five players who are going to make a massive difference to this roster and this team. Obviously, I'm so excited to see what happens next in terms of even this the depth signings is exciting, and then kind of round out the rest of the offseason and enter that draft mode. But anyway, just going forward, thank you guys for joining us. Let us know what you guys thought about free agency. Who are some players maybe you're hoping to get in the next couple of days? And just going forward, I am excited to do another mock draft. Our 3.0 will be coming out, sometime in the next week or two. Free agency, I will say, definitely changed the top of the draft, and I feel like a lot of mock drafts where it's going to be totally changed from literally only 1 week ago.